You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. What if I told you that the uncomfortable truth you've been avoiding, the one that secretly hurts the most, is also the most liberating? What if I told you that most people are not judging you, not watching you, not thinking about your mistakes at all because nobody cares? And once you truly understand this, your anxiety loosens its grip, your need for approval fades, and your focus snaps back to where it belongs, yourself. You've spent years overthinking how you're perceived. You replay conversations. You hesitate before acting. You delay becoming who you know you could be, all because you assume eyes are on you. They aren't, and understood this centuries ago. He knew that freedom begins the moment you stop outsourcing your self-worth to the opinions of others. In this video, you're going to learn how Stoicism turns indifference into power, how realizing that nobody cares becomes the ultimate permission slip to live deliberately, calmly, and on your own terms. But this only works if you stay with me until the very end, because the final insight ties everything together, and once it clicks, you won't see yourself or the world the same way again. Number 1, nobody is watching you as closely as you think. You walk through most of your days carrying an invisible audience on your shoulders, a sense that you're being evaluated, judged, tracked, that every move leaves a mark, every hesitation is noticed, every flaw is. But this belief is heavier than it is true. Dismantled it quietly when he wrote, "Remember that it is not he who reviles or strikes you who insults you, but your opinion that these things are insulting." In the same way, it is not people watching you that creates pressure. It's your belief that they are. And once you question that belief, a surprising amount of mental weight falls away. The truth is uncomfortable at first, but deeply freeing. Most people are consumed by their own thoughts, their own worries, their own internal noise. They are not tracking your missteps or replaying your moments the way you replay them in your own mind. You are the main character only in your own head. Realizing this isn't meant to diminish you, it's meant to release you. When you stop imagining a spotlight that doesn't exist, you reclaim energy that has been leaking out through anxiety, self-consciousness, and overthinking. Reminded himself daily that human attention is fleeting, praise fades, criticism evaporates, opinions shift like weather. Soon you will have forgotten everything, soon everyone will have forgotten you. That line isn't bleak. It's grounding. It strips away the illusion that you are constantly on trial. If everything passes, then so does judgment. So does embarrassment. So does the imagined scrutiny that keeps you hesitant and small. You don't hesitate because you lack ability. You hesitate because you overestimate how much other people care. That overestimation quietly shapes your behavior. You soften your edges. You delay decisions. You edit yourself mid-thought. And in doing so, you give strangers and passing opinions authority over your inner life. The Stoics would call this a misplacement of control. Epictetus was blunt about it. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Not because foolishness is good, but because freedom requires indifference to imagined observers. Here's the shift you're invited to make. Move your focus inward where it belongs. Ask yourself not how you appear, but how you act. Not how you are perceived, but whether you are aligned. Emphasize this relentlessly. He didn't ask, "How do I look to them?" He asked, "Am I living according to reason and virtue?" That is the only audience the Stoics took seriously, their own conscience. When you adopt that orientation, your life becomes quieter, steadier, more deliberate. You train this mindset through repetition, not insight alone. One simple exercise is deliberate invisibility. Go through parts of your day reminding yourself no one is watching, and even if they were, it wouldn't matter. Let that thought loosen your posture, your breath, your urgency. Feel how much effort you've been spending on mental performance. Then withdraw that effort. Reinvest it in attention to your thoughts, your choices, your direction. Another practice is negative visualization, used often by the Stoics. Imagine being misunderstood. Imagine being ignored. Imagine being forgotten. Then notice something surprising: you are still here, still capable, still intact. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." When you rehearse the worst internally, you reduce its power externally. The fear dissolves because you see it for what it is, a story your mind keeps telling without evidence. This understanding changes how you move. You stop rushing to explain yourself. You stop curating every word. You stop living as if approval is oxygen. Instead, you begin acting with quiet firmness. Calm doesn't come from confidence displays, it comes from detachment. When you truly accept that most people are not paying attention, you stop asking for permission to exist as you are. There's also a deeper layer here. When you believe you're constantly being watched, you hand over your autonomy. You let external noise shape internal direction. Warned against this trap when he wrote, "I can control my thoughts as necessary. Then how can I be troubled?" Control begins when attention is reclaimed. And attention is reclaimed the moment you stop scattering it toward imagined judgments. You can practice this daily with a simple reflection. Ask yourself where you held back today, not because it was wise, but because you were afraid of how it would look. Don't justify it. Don't dramatize it. Just observe. That observation builds clarity, and clarity builds courage. Over time, you'll notice fewer internal pauses, fewer mental edits, fewer unnecessary hesitations. Another powerful habit is values rehearsal. At the start of the day, remind yourself what actually matters to you. Not outcomes, not reactions, principles. Often rehearsed virtues like patience, discipline, and truthfulness before entering the world. When your values are front and center, external attention loses its grip. You're no longer acting for approval, you're acting from alignment. You're not here to be constantly evaluated. You're here to live, to choose, to refine yourself quietly. The Stoics never advocated withdrawal from life, but they rejected performance. They understood that a life lived for spectators is a fragile one. A life lived for integrity is unshakable. When you internalize that distinction, your nervous system calms. Your decisions simplify. Your sense of urgency fades into purpose. Take action now. The next time you feel watched, pause, ask yourself who exactly is watching and why their imagined opinion has authority. Then redirect your attention back to what you can control: your response, your effort, your character. Do this consistently, not dramatically, quietly, patiently. Wrote his thoughts not for an audience, but for himself. That's the spirit you're being invited into. Live as if no one is watching, because most of the time no one is. And even when they are, it doesn't change what matters. When you release the illusion of constant observation, you step into a deeper freedom. A freedom rooted not in rebellion, but in clarity. Focus on yourself. That's where your power has been waiting all along. Number 2, most opinions about you are fleeting and forgotten. Most opinions about you are fleeting and forgotten, yet you live as if they are permanent verdicts etched into stone. You move cautiously, second-guess yourself, replay moments in your mind, imagining judgment lingering long after it's passed. Saw through this illusion clearly. He wrote, "Soon you will have forgotten everything. Soon everyone will have forgotten you." That line isn't meant to depress you. It's meant to liberate you. Because the weight you place on how others see you is wildly disproportionate to how long those thoughts actually exist in their minds. Most judgments are momentary flashes, formed quickly, held briefly, replaced just as fast by something else. You assume people are studying you, analyzing you, holding onto opinions about you with the same intensity you hold onto them yourself. But that's projection. Everyone is absorbed in their own inner world, their own worries, their own self-image. The Stoics understood that human attention is short-lived and restless, reminded himself again and again that praise and blame are both echoes that fade. When you let this truth sink in, something inside you loosens. You stop performing. You stop editing yourself endlessly. You start breathing again. What traps you isn't other people's opinions, it's your imagination of their permanence. You give temporary thoughts long-term power. Epictetus was blunt about this. He said, "If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, 'He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone.'" There's calm confidence in that response, not arrogance, perspective. It recognizes that opinions are partial, shallow, and incomplete by nature. Why would you build your identity on something so flimsy? The moment you accept that most opinions evaporate quickly, you regain control over your energy. You stop wasting emotional fuel on mental rehearsals that don't matter. You stop carrying invisible audiences into every decision. You realize that the pressure you feel isn't coming from the world. It's coming from your attachment to being perceived a certain way. The Stoics called this attachment a form of slavery. Not because people are cruel, but because you hand them power they never asked for and don't know they have. Think about how often you revisit something you did or said long after the moment has passed. You replay it. You analyze it. You wonder how it landed. Meanwhile, life keeps moving. Warned against this mental loop when he wrote, "Do not waste the remainder of your life in thoughts about others." That sentence is sharp for a reason. Time spent obsessing over opinions is time stolen from your own growth. You don't get it back. And worse, it trains you to live externally instead of internally. Here, where action begins. You don't free yourself from concern about opinions by pretending not to care. You free yourself by understanding they're true. Most thoughts people have about you don't survive the next distraction. Knowing this should change how you act today. Speak with more honesty. Move with more intention. Choose based on what aligns with your values, not what preserves a fragile image. Constantly return to this idea. Act in accordance with reason and virtue, and let everything else fall away. A powerful Stoic practice you can adopt is negative visualization, but not in the way it's usually framed. Instead of imagining worst-case outcomes, imagine opinions dissolving. Picture judgment arising, floating briefly, and then disappearing, because that's what actually happens. This mental rehearsal trains your nervous system to stop treating opinions as threats. Over time, your body stops reacting with tension. You respond instead of bracing. Calm replaces anxiety. Another habit worth building is selective attention. Epictetus taught that not everything deserves your notice. Ask yourself regularly, is this within my control? Other people's opinions never are. Your conduct always is. When you feel the pull to seek approval or fear disapproval, pause and redirect your focus to what you can govern, your effort, your integrity, your discipline. This redirection isn't passive. It's an active reclaiming of your mind. You'll notice something subtle when you stop centering opinions. Your confidence becomes quieter but stronger. You don't need constant reassurance. You don't crumble under criticism. You don't inflate under praise. Seneca warned that both admiration and contempt can destabilize you if you depend on them. The Stoic aim isn't indifference, it's independence, emotional self-sufficiency. When opinions no longer anchor your mood, you become steady. People sense that steadiness, even if they can't name it. There's also a deeper freedom waiting for you here. When you accept that opinions fade, you stop postponing your life. You stop waiting for permission. You act now. You choose now. You grow now. Urged himself to live as if each day were complete in itself. That mindset doesn't leave room for imaginary judgments. It demands presence, and presence dissolves fear. Try this exercise regularly. Before making a decision, ask yourself how much this will matter in a year. Then ask how much it matters today. You'll often realize the fear is inflated, the stakes exaggerated. This isn't about recklessness, it's about proportion. The Stoics were masters of scale. They zoomed out mentally to see how small most concerns really are. You should do the same. You don't need to harden yourself against the world. You need to stop overestimating it. Most people aren't watching. Most opinions aren't lasting. Most judgments aren't remembered. What remains is your character and how faithfully you live by it. Put it plainly, I do my duty, other things trouble me not. Let that be your anchor. So take the pressure off. Stop dragging imaginary audiences into your decisions. Stop living as if every moment is an evaluation. Focus on yourself, not in isolation, but in alignment. Build habits that strengthen your inner world. Reflect daily. Act deliberately. Let opinions pass like weather, because they will, whether you cling to them or not. When you finally accept how fleeting judgment is, you stop shrinking. You expand. You move forward with calm resolve. And in that state, you don't need approval. You have direction. Number 3, your worth is not created by external validation. Your worth is not created by external validation. And deep down, you already know this, even if your habits sometimes say otherwise. Wrote, I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others. That line cuts because it exposes a quiet contradiction. You claim to value yourself, yet you hand the final verdict on your worth to people who don't live inside your mind, don't carry your burdens, and won't be present at the end of your journey. The Stoics saw this as a fundamental error. When you allow validation from the outside to define you, you place your sense of self on unstable ground. And anything built on unstable ground will keep you anxious, reactive, and endlessly seeking. You feel this whenever approval becomes oxygen, when attention lifts you up and silence makes you uneasy, when praise energizes you and indifference drains you. This is not strength, it's dependence. Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why would he say that? Because freedom begins the moment you stop outsourcing your self-assessment. The moment you decide that your value doesn't rise or fall based on reactions, applause, or acknowledgement, something inside you relaxes. You stop performing. You stop contorting yourself to be palatable. You begin to stand still within yourself. External validation is tempting because it's immediate. It feels like proof, but it's also fleeting and unreliable. One moment you're approved, the next you're ignored. Reminded himself daily that opinions are impressions, not facts. Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. When you let opinions define your worth, you allow shifting perspectives to dictate your inner state. That's a recipe for restlessness. Stoicism teaches you to reverse this pattern, to anchor your value in what you control. Your character, your effort, your discipline, your integrity. This is where your power returns. When you stop asking, how am I being perceived? And start asking, am I living according to my values? The noise fades. You no longer need to be constantly reassured. You no longer chase confirmation that you matter, you already know. And knowing that internally is far more stabilizing than hearing it externally. Seneca said, the wise man is content with himself. Content doesn't mean complacent. It means rooted. It means your sense of worth doesn't wobble every time attention shifts elsewhere. Be honest with yourself. Notice how often your actions are subtly shaped by the hope of approval. Notice how quickly your mood changes based on response, or lack of it. The Stoics would tell you not to condemn this, but to observe it clearly. Awareness is the first discipline. Treated self-observation as a daily practice, not a one-time realization. When you catch yourself seeking validation, pause. Ask yourself why you need someone else to confirm what should already be settled within you. Here's a practical exercise to begin dismantling this habit. For a moment each day, reflect on one action you took that aligned with your values, regardless of whether it was noticed. Sit with that. Let it register. This trains your mind to associate worth with alignment, not recognition. Over time, your nervous system starts to detach from external feedback loops. You become calmer, more grounded, less reactive. Another exercise is negative visualization, not of loss, but of indifference. Imagine being unseen, unacknowledged, and still acting with discipline, honesty, and effort. The Stoics practice this to build inner resilience. When you rehearse emotional independence, you reduce your fear of being overlooked. And once that fear loses its grip, validation loses its leverage. This doesn't mean you reject all feedback or isolate yourself emotionally. Stoicism isn't withdrawal, it's sovereignty. You can appreciate praise without needing it. You can hear criticism without being dismantled by it. Advised, if anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. Notice the confidence in that statement. There's no desperation there, no hunger for approval, just commitment to truth and self-correction. When your worth is internal, your behavior changes. You stop oversharing to be understood. You stop explaining yourself to be accepted. You move with quiet certainty. People sense this. Ironically, the less you seek validation, the more respect you command. But even that becomes irrelevant because your motivation has shifted. You're no longer driven by reaction. You're guided by principle. Take action today by setting a private standard for yourself. Not a public image, not a persona. A standard rooted in character. Decide what qualities you respect in yourself. Discipline, honesty, restraint, effort, and measure your days by those metrics alone. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Embodiment doesn't require applause. It requires consistency. There will be moments when silence feels uncomfortable, when recognition doesn't come, when you wonder if what you're doing even matters. This is where Stoic philosophy becomes practical, not theoretical. Remind yourself that value is not created by being seen, it's created by being aligned. Your actions matter because you choose them, not because they're acknowledged. That shift alone will free enormous mental energy. Practice withholding self-judgment based on outcomes and reactions. Judge only effort and intention. At the end of the day, ask yourself one simple question: did I act according to my values today? If the answer is yes, rest easy. If not, correct course tomorrow. This is Stoic self-respect in action. Quiet, firm, unshakable. Lived surrounded by opinions, praise, criticism, and scrutiny. Yet he constantly reminded himself to turn inward. Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. That retreat is always available to you too. But you only gain access when you stop seeking permission to feel worthy. Nobody cares in the way your anxious mind imagines, and that's not an insult, it's freedom. It means you're released from performing, released from proving, released from chasing. Focus on yourself, build your character, anchor your worth internally. When you do, you stop asking the world who you are. You already know. Number 4. The mind suffers more from imagined judgment than real criticism. Once you see this clearly, something inside you loosens. Understood this deeply. He wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Read that again and let it land. Most of the pressure you feel isn't coming from what people are actually saying or doing. It's coming from the stories you're running in your head, the glances you interpret. The silence you assume means disapproval, the future reactions you rehearse over and over. None of it is happening in the present moment, yet your body reacts as if it is. Your heart tightens, your thoughts race, your behavior shrinks, and all of it is driven by shadows. You don't realize how much energy you're leaking by trying to manage opinions that don't exist. The Stoics would tell you that this is the mind turning against itself. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." That line isn't abstract philosophy. It's a diagnosis. Your distress doesn't come from criticism. It comes from anticipation, from projection, from assuming you're being evaluated when, in truth, most people are absorbed in their own concerns. Your mind creates a courtroom, assigns invisible judges, and then sentences you without a trial. This imagined judgment becomes a quiet tyrant. It shapes what you say, what you don't say, what you start, and what you abandon. You hesitate not because something is wrong, but because you fear how it might be perceived. And the irony is brutal. The more you try to avoid judgment, the more controlled you become by it. Warned against this trap when he reminded himself, "I do what is mine to do, the rest does not disturb me." That's the posture of a free mind. You act according to reason and values, not imagined reactions. If you're honest, you'll notice how often your thoughts drift toward how you're being seen rather than what you're actually doing. That drift weakens focus. It fractures presence. It pulls you out of the task in front of you and drops you into a hypothetical future where you're already under attack. The Stoics trained themselves to return to the present relentlessly. Why? Because judgment only exists in your imagination when you leave the now. In the present moment, there is only action, only effort, only choice. You don't need to eliminate concern about others overnight. That's unrealistic. What you need is to stop treating imagined criticism as truth. Start questioning it. Ask yourself whether what you're feeling is based on something real or something assumed. This simple pause is powerful. It creates distance between you and your thoughts. Practice this constantly, reminding himself that opinions are just impressions, not facts. When you stop merging with every thought, you regain control of your inner world. There's also something else the Stoics saw clearly. Real criticism, when it does arrive, is rarely as devastating as you fear. It's usually brief, limited, and survivable. Imagined judgment, on the other hand, is endless. It has no boundaries. Your mind can replay it forever, embellish it, sharpen it. That's why it hurts more. That's why it drains you. You're fighting an enemy that never stops because it doesn't exist outside your head. Here's a habit you can begin practicing immediately. When you feel the weight of imagined judgment, say to yourself, "This is a thought, not a verdict." That sentence alone breaks the spell. You're not denying the thought, you're reclassifying it. Seneca believed that numbing mental impressions correctly was essential to inner calm. Once you see a thought as just a thought, it loses its authority. It can still be there, but it no longer commands you. Another practice is voluntary exposure to indifference. Reminded himself that praise and blame are equally outside his control. Spend a few moments each day deliberately allowing the idea that not everyone will approve of you and noticing that you're still intact, still breathing, still capable. This isn't pessimism, it's resilience training. When you stop needing universal approval, your mind relaxes. Your actions become cleaner, more intentional. You should also train yourself to redirect attention from perception to purpose. Whenever you catch yourself wondering how you're being judged, shift the question to, "Am I doing what I believe is right now?" That's a Stoic move. It collapses unnecessary noise and brings you back to your sphere of control. Called this returning to the ruling faculty, the part of you that chooses rather than reacts. The goal isn't to become careless or arrogant. The goal is clarity. To see that most of the mental suffering you experience is self-generated. Once you grasp this, you stop wasting energy on rehearsals that never end. You stop living in imagined rooms full of people watching you. You start living where you actually are. And that's where strength grows. Take action today by doing a short mental audit. Notice how often your thoughts revolve around how you're perceived. Not with judgment, just awareness. That awareness alone begins to loosen the grip. Then choose one daily action where you focus entirely on execution, not reception. No monitoring, no self-commentary, just presence. This is Stoic discipline in practice. Didn't write for applause. He wrote to discipline his own mind. That's your invitation too. Stop letting imagined judgment dictate your behavior. Stop surrendering peace to scenarios that haven't occurred. Focus on what is yours to govern: your effort, your character, your direction. When you do, something liberating happens. The noise fades, the weight lifts, and you realize that the mind was never under attack. It was just distracted. Nobody cares as much as you think, and that's not an insult, it's freedom. Number 5, attention spent on others. Opinions is energy stolen from your purpose. Attention spent on others, opinions is energy stolen from your purpose, and you feel that theft every day whether you admit it or not. The moment your mind drifts toward what they might think, how you might be judged, or whether you're being approved of, something vital leaks out of you. Focus thins. Intention weakens. Knew this trap well, which is why he kept reminding himself. It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. Read that slowly. That single sentence exposes how backwards most people live. You were not built to be a committee. You were built to act, to move, to build something meaningful with the time you have. Every thought you give to someone else's approval is a thought not given to your work, your discipline, your growth. You can feel it when your mind becomes crowded, when you hesitate instead of act, when you overthink instead of execute. The Stoics understood that attention is your most precious resource. You don't get it back once it's spent. Called the mind a fortress, but most people leave the gates wide open, letting anyone walk in and rearrange the furniture. Opinions come and go. Judgments shift. But the time you sacrifice to them is gone permanently. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most opinions don't even come from deep thought. They're impulsive, emotional, often forgotten minutes later, yet you carry them like heavy stones. You replay them, you reshape yourself around them. Epictetus warned against this when he said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That isn't arrogance, it's clarity. It's the recognition that progress and approval rarely travel together. When you chase acceptance, you dilute direction. When you chase purpose, acceptance becomes irrelevant. Pay attention to how quickly your mood shifts based on imagined reactions. A single look you invent in your head, a tone you assume, a judgment you project, none of it confirmed, all of it draining. The Stoics would call this misplaced attention. You're investing emotional energy in things that aren't yours to control. Repeated this relentlessly. Focus only on what belongs to you, your thoughts, your actions, your intentions. Everything else is noise. Not harmful noise, but distracting noise. And distraction is enough to ruin momentum. Your purpose doesn't demand consensus. It demands consistency. The more you scan the room for validation, the less present you are in your own life. You start performing instead of building, adjusting instead of committing. Over time, this creates a quiet resentment toward yourself. You feel it when you realize you've been busy but not fulfilled, active but not aligned. That's the cost of divided attention. The Stoics didn't isolate themselves from society, but they refused to outsource their self-worth to it. Seneca put it bluntly, "No man is free who is not master of himself." If opinions control your emotional state, then you're not in charge. And if you're not in charge, your purpose will always come second. Freedom, in the Stoic sense, begins the moment you stop letting external voices dictate internal direction. You don't need to silence the world. You need to stop consulting it unnecessarily. There's a difference. Most of what occupies your mental space doesn't require a response, an adjustment, or even acknowledgement. Advised himself to ask, "Does this really deserve my attention?" Make that question a habit. Ask it whenever your mind drifts outward instead of forward. That single pause reclaims power. Here's a practical exercise you can start immediately. For 1 week, notice how often your thoughts revolve around how you are perceived. Not just the obvious moments, but the subtle ones. The mental rehearsals, the imagined reactions. Each time you catch it, don't judge yourself, just redirect. Bring your attention back to the task in front of you. This is attention training. The Stoics believed the mind could be disciplined like the body. This is how you begin. Another exercise is intentional narrowing. Choose one daily action that directly serves your long-term direction. 1. When your attention starts wandering, anchor it back to that action, not emotionally, practically. Purpose isn't found by thinking about it, it's built through repeated focus. Reminded himself, concentrate every minute like a Roman on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness. That's not poetic advice, it's operational. You'll notice resistance at first, a subtle anxiety when you stop monitoring opinions, a feeling of exposure. That's normal. You've trained yourself to seek reassurance. Now you're training yourself to stand alone. The discomfort isn't danger, it's withdrawal from a dependency. And on the other side of it is clarity, calm, direction. The less you feed your attention to others' opinions, the stronger your internal compass becomes. Decisions get cleaner, hesitation fades. You stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. You move faster because you're no longer dragging invisible weight behind you. This isn't about becoming indifferent or cold. It's about becoming selective. Your attention is finite. Treat it like it matters, because it does. Wrote his meditations as reminders, not lessons. He already knew the philosophy. He needed repetition. You do too. You will forget. You will drift, and that's fine. The practice is returning, again and again. Each return strengthens your focus muscle. So take action now. Decide that your attention belongs to your purpose, not to imagined judgments. Decide that your energy is better spent building than monitoring. You don't need permission to focus. You don't need approval to move forward. The work doesn't care who's watching, and in the end, neither should you. Nobody is thinking about you as much as you think they are. Understood this deeply. That realization isn't depressing, it's liberating. It frees your attention. And when your attention is free, your purpose finally gets the energy it deserves. Number 6, you control your actions, not how they are received. One of the most freeing truths ever wrote was also one of the hardest to live by. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Read that slowly. Sit with it. Because embedded in that sentence is the idea that will either exhaust you for life or finally unburden you. You control your actions, not how they are received. And the moment you stop trying to manage reactions, opinions, interpretations, and emotional echoes in other people's minds, something inside you loosens. Your shoulders drop. Your breathing changes. Your energy comes back to where it belongs, into your own hands. You've been conditioned, often without realizing it, to measure yourself by response. Approval becomes proof. Disapproval feels like failure. Silence feels like rejection. But Stoicism dismantles this reflex completely. It asks you to separate what is yours from what never was. Your choices, your effort, your restraint, your intention, these are yours. How they land, how they're twisted, praised, ignored, or misunderstood, that belongs to the world. And the world has never been consistent, fair, or interested in protecting your peace. When you try to control reception, you become reactive. You soften what you believe. You hesitate when you should act. You overthink words that were already honest. You replay moments that are already gone. Warned against this internal chaos repeatedly, reminding himself that other people's judgments are nothing to you. Not because they don't exist, but because they are outside your jurisdiction. You wouldn't try to command the weather, yet you exhaust yourself trying to manage perceptions. That contradiction is the source of so much quiet misery. Here's the shift Stoicism demands of you. Act with integrity, then release the outcome. Not emotionally detach in a cold way, but consciously let go. Epictetus was relentless about this. He taught that freedom begins when you stop confusing effort with outcome. You are responsible for the arrow leaving the bow, not where the wind carries it. When you internalize this, your behavior becomes cleaner. You stop performing. You stop negotiating your values for applause. You stop shrinking to avoid friction. And ironically, that's when your presence gains weight. But this isn't easy, and the Stoics never pretended it was. Your mind will resist. It will say, but what if they misunderstand me? What if I'm judged? What if I'm ignored? Answered this centuries ago. I do what is mine to do, the rest does not disturb me. That sentence is a boundary, a mental line in the sand. It's not indifference, it's discipline. It's you deciding not to rent space in your mind to things you cannot command. You need to practice this deliberately. Start by noticing how often your mood depends on reaction. Notice how fast you scan for validation after you act. That awareness alone begins to weaken the habit. Then train yourself to pause after action and say, I've done my part, not with arrogance, with calm finality. This is a Stoic exercise in ownership without attachment. You own your conduct fully, then you let go fully. Half ownership is what creates anxiety. Another practice is negative visualization, not of disaster but of misinterpretation. Imagine your actions being received poorly, dismissed, or misunderstood, and then remind yourself that your duty remains unchanged. Use this method constantly to harden his resolve without bitterness. When you rehearse non-approval mentally, you become less dependent on it emotionally. You stop being surprised by it. You stop fearing it. And fear is what usually makes you bend. You also need to simplify your internal scoreboard. Right now, it may be cluttered with invisible judges. Stoicism asks you to replace all of them with one question. Was this in accordance with reason and virtue? That's it. That's the entire evaluation. Seneca believed that a person who lives by this standard becomes unshakable because their sense of worth is internally sourced. External reactions become background noise, not guiding signals. This doesn't mean you become reckless or insensitive. It means you become precise. You speak when it's right to speak. You act when it's right to act. And you accept that reception is filtered through other people's fears, expectations, wounds, and projections, none of which are yours to manage. When you stop personalizing response, you stop internalizing distortion. That alone clears an enormous amount of mental fog. There's a quiet confidence that emerges when you live this way. You don't rush to explain yourself. You don't chase agreement. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. Reminded himself that time will reveal what is real without your interference. When you trust that, you stop forcing clarity. You allow your actions to stand on their own. That restraint is not weakness. It's strength under control. Try this exercise daily. Before acting, set your intention clearly. After acting, detach consciously. Say it internally if you must. This is no longer mine. Repeat it until it becomes reflex. Over time, you'll feel less pulled by reactions, less drained by outcomes, less fractured by noise. You'll start moving through life with a steadier rhythm because your energy is no longer leaking outward. Another powerful habit is to limit rumination. When your mind starts replaying how something was received, interrupt it with reason. Ask, is this within my control right now? If the answer is no, end the loop. This is straight from Epictetus' playbook. Rumination feels productive, but it's usually just disguised helplessness. Cut it off. Return to what you can shape, your next action, your next decision, your next moment of discipline. Wrote his meditations not for praise, but to remind himself how easily the mind drifts toward external dependence. You're no different. The practice is ongoing. But every time you choose to anchor yourself in what you control, you reclaim a piece of your freedom. You become less reactive, more deliberate, more centered. Nobody cares in the way your anxious mind imagines. And that's not an insult, it's a gift. It means you're free to focus on your conduct instead of your reception. You're free to live deliberately instead of perform endlessly. You're free to act with clarity and let the world do what it always does. Interpret, misinterpret, forget, move on. Take that freedom seriously. Guard it. Build habits that reinforce it. Control your actions. Release the rest. That is Stoic strength. And once you experience it, you'll never want to go back. Number 7. Chasing approval makes you a slave to chance. Chasing approval makes you a slave to chance because the moment you hand your peace over to other people's opinions, you give up control of your inner life. You already feel this, even if you haven't named it that way. There's a subtle tension that shows up when your mood depends on reactions, when your confidence rises and falls based on how you're perceived. Saw this clearly when he wrote, "I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others." That line isn't just observation, it's a warning. When you value external approval more than your own judgment, you begin living, not deliberately. Approval is unstable by nature. It shifts with moods, trends, misunderstandings, and projection. You can do the same thing twice and receive opposite reactions. When your sense of worth is tied to something that random, you're essentially gambling your emotional state every day. That's why the Stoics emphasized internal authority. Epictetus reminded his students, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Not because being rejected is noble in itself, but because freedom begins the moment you stop needing permission to be yourself. When approval becomes the goal, authenticity quietly leaves the room. You don't notice this slavery immediately. It disguises itself as being considerate, adaptable, easygoing. But over time, you start editing yourself. You hesitate before speaking. You second-guess your instincts. You scan the room before deciding how to act. And the more you do this, the more disconnected you feel from your own center. The Stoics would say this is what happens when you confuse what is up to you with what is not. Other people's reactions will never be fully under your control. Tying your peace to them is like trying to build a house on moving ground. Repeatedly returned to this idea in his private writings. It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people but care more about their opinion than our own. Think about what that does to you over time. You stop asking, is this right? And start asking, will this be accepted? That shift alone can slowly hollow you out. You may still be busy. You may still be praised. But inside, there's a quiet restlessness because you're no longer living from principle. You're performing. Here's the hard truth the Stoics would want you to face calmly. Approval doesn't make you secure, it makes you dependent. And dependence is the opposite of strength. Seneca warned, he who depends on another's approval lives in constant anxiety. When your sense of value is outsourced, you're always waiting. Waiting to be liked. Waiting to be validated. Waiting to be reassured. That waiting drains energy you could be using to build something solid within yourself. The way out isn't rebellion or indifference for show. It's discipline, internal discipline. You begin by reclaiming your right to self-judgment. Instead of asking whether you were liked today, ask whether you acted in accordance with your values. That's a powerful shift. Advised, if you are doing your proper work, do not care whether you are cold or warm or hungry or sleepy. He was pointing to something deeper. When your focus is right action, external feedback becomes background noise. You can train this mindset deliberately. One practical exercise is daily intention setting. Before the day begins, decide what qualities you will embody regardless of response. Calm, honesty, self-restraint, courage, not outcomes, qualities. This anchors you. When reactions fluctuate, you return to your intention instead of reacting emotionally. Over time, this builds a quiet confidence that doesn't need applause. Another exercise is negative visualization, a classic Stoic practice. Briefly imagine acting in alignment with your principles and receiving no approval at all. No recognition, no affirmation. Sit with that feeling. Notice that you remain intact. Your character isn't damaged. Your breath still moves. This weakens the emotional grip approval has over you. Epictetus taught that what you can endure without resentment loses its power over you. You also need to become comfortable with being misunderstood. The Stoics accepted this as inevitable. Wrote, "Be content to seem what you really are." Not everyone will interpret you correctly, and that's not a problem to be solved. It's a reality to be accepted. When you stop trying to manage impressions, you free up enormous mental space. That space can be used for growth, clarity, and self-command. Chasing approval keeps you externally busy but internally passive. Focusing on yourself does the opposite. It makes you internally active and externally steady. This doesn't mean isolating yourself or becoming cold. It means choosing self-respect over social currency. The Stoics believed that dignity comes from consistency, not popularity. When your actions align with your values, respect, real respect, tends to follow naturally without being chased. Take action now. Pick one moment each day where you deliberately choose alignment over approval. Notice the urge to seek validation and let it pass without acting on it. This is training. It may feel uncomfortable at first, but discomfort is the price of freedom. Seneca put it plainly, "The wise man is content with himself." That contentment isn't arrogance, it's independence. You don't need to announce this shift. You don't need to explain it. You simply live it. Over time, your reactions slow down. Your decisions feel cleaner. You stop feeling pulled in 100 directions by invisible expectations. And the irony is this: when you stop chasing approval, you become harder to manipulate, harder to shake, and far more grounded. Nobody caring is not a curse, it's liberation. It means you are free to build yourself without permission. Focus on what is yours to control. Let chance keep its chaos. You remain steady. That is Stoic freedom. Number 8, inner discipline matters more than public recognition. Inner discipline matters more than public recognition, and deep down, you already know this, even if part of you still wants to be seen, praised, noticed. That pull is human. Never it. He simply refused to let it rule him. He wrote, "I do my duty. Other things trouble me not at all." That line isn't indifference toward life, it's clarity. It's the decision to anchor yourself in what you control rather than chasing reflections in the eyes of others. Recognition is unstable. It comes and goes with mood, trends, and timing. Discipline, on the other hand, is something you carry with you in silence. And silence is where real strength is built. You waste energy the moment you measure yourself by applause. Your mood starts depending on reactions you don't command. One day you feel elevated, the next you feel invisible. Warned against this exact trap when he reminded himself that the opinions of others are noisy and empty. Not because people are bad, but because their attention is fleeting. When you internalize this, something powerful happens. You stop performing. You stop adjusting your behavior to be digestible. You start acting with intention. Inner discipline is not flashy. It doesn't announce itself. It trains you to show up whether anyone is watching or not. There's a quiet dignity in doing the work without an audience. In resisting impulses no one will ever applaud you for resisting. In choosing restraint, focus, and effort in moments where recognition would never reach you anyway. The Stoics believed this was the highest form of freedom. Epictetus put it plainly, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." He wasn't encouraging humiliation. He was pointing out that growth often looks unimpressive from the outside. Discipline asks you to act correctly even when it earns you nothing visible. That's the test. If you're honest, you can feel the difference between doing something to be seen and doing something because it's right. One feels anxious and hungry. The other feels calm and settled. Public recognition excites the ego but weakens your center. Inner discipline strengthens your center but doesn't entertain your ego. That's why most people avoid it. It offers no immediate reward, no validation, no applause, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing you kept your word to yourself. And that satisfaction is more durable than praise. Reminded himself daily that fame dissolves quickly. He listed emperors, heroes, and celebrated figures, only to conclude that time erases all names, not to depress himself, but to free himself. When you truly absorb that truth, you stop chasing the illusion of being remembered. You focus instead on being grounded. You realize that the only reputation that actually matters is the one you carry internally. The way you behave when there's nothing to gain. The way you think when no one is listening. Inner discipline means governing your impulses before they govern you. It means choosing order over chaos, direction over drift. And this isn't about being harsh or robotic. It's about being deliberate. Describe the disciplined mind as one that remains upright, independent, unhurried. That state doesn't come from external success. It comes from repetition, from training yourself daily to act in alignment with your values regardless of outcome. Recognition can never give you that. At best, it distracts you from developing it. Here's a practice you can begin immediately. Start doing at least one important thing each day with the explicit intention that no one will ever know you did it. No mention, no signal, no sharing, just action. This rewires your motivation. It trains you to detach effort from reward. The Stoics believed that virtue practiced in secret was because it wasn't diluted by performance. Over time, this builds an internal standard. You stop asking, "Did anyone notice?" and start asking, "Did I act well?" Another discipline is to limit how often you seek reassurance, especially mentally. Notice how frequently your thoughts drift toward how you are perceived. Each time you catch this, gently bring your focus back to what you're doing. Call this returning to yourself. Not once, but repeatedly. This redirection is a muscle. The more you train it, the quieter the noise becomes. You don't suppress the desire for recognition, you outgrow it. You also need to reflect on impermanence, not in a dramatic way, but in a grounding one. Remind yourself that today's praise is tomorrow's silence. Today's attention is next week's forgetfulness. This isn't cynicism, it's realism. And realism stabilizes you. When you stop expecting others to carry your sense of worth, you become lighter, freer, more focused. You stop performing your life and start living it. The Stoics never argued that effort shouldn't lead to results. They simply insisted that results should never be the reason you act. Epictetus taught that you are responsible for your choices, not their reception. That distinction is everything. When you internalize it, rejection loses its sting. Approval loses its intoxication. You remain steady either way. That steadiness is rare, and rare things carry weight. Take action now. Strip one habit of its need for recognition. Do it quietly. Commit to it fully. Let the only witness be your own conscience. Over time, you'll notice a shift. Less urgency, less restlessness, more clarity, more self-trust. Inner discipline doesn't make noise, but it reshapes you from the inside out. Nobody cares in the way your ego hopes they will. And that's not an insult, it's a release. Understood this. That's why he focused relentlessly on governing himself rather than impressing others. When you do the same, you stop outsourcing your worth. You reclaim your attention. You build something unshakable. And in the end, that quiet strength is worth more than all the recognition you were chasing. Number 9, self-respect grows when you stop performing for others. Self-respect begins to grow the moment you stop performing for others, and that shift is quieter than you expect. There's no applause for it, no external reward. In fact, the first thing you may notice is discomfort, a strange emptiness. That's because so much of your energy has been spent managing how you're perceived, adjusting your tone, your reactions, your choices so they land well in other people's minds. Saw this clearly when he wrote, "I do my duty, other things trouble me not." That line is a release. It's permission to stop shaping yourself into something consumable. When you stop performing, you don't become less, you become solid, and solidity is the foundation of self-respect. Performance is exhausting because it's endless. There's always another audience, another expectation, another silent judgment you feel pressured to anticipate. You start measuring yourself through invisible eyes. You speak with one foot on the brakes. You decide with hesitation, not because you doubt what's right, but because you're imagining reactions that haven't even happened. The Stoics warned against this mental slavery. Epictetus was blunt. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. What he's pointing to isn't recklessness, it's freedom. The freedom that comes when your actions are guided by values rather than applause. When you perform, your sense of worth becomes outsourced. It rises and falls based on approval you don't control. That's not confidence, it's dependence. And deep down, you feel it. You feel the instability. Self-respect can't grow in borrowed soil. It needs internal ground. Reminded himself again and again that the opinions of others are fleeting impressions, not truths. Once you absorb that, truly absorb it, you stop contorting yourself to be liked. You start asking a different question, not how will this look, but is this aligned with who I choose to be? Stopping performance doesn't mean withdrawing or becoming cold. It means showing up without masks. It means acting without rehearsing for approval. At first, this feels risky. Your mind will tell you that you'll lose something if you don't manage perception. But what you actually lose is friction, the constant internal tension of trying to be acceptable. Seneca captured this beautifully when he wrote, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." When you try to be everything to everyone, you abandon yourself. When you stop, you return. Here's the hard truth the Stoics understood. Nobody is watching you as closely as you think. And even if they were, it wouldn't matter. Their attention is temporary. Their interpretation's unstable. Wrote, "Soon you will have forgotten everything. Soon everyone will have forgotten you." That's not nihilism, it's clarity. It strips away the illusion that your life is a stage. Once that illusion fades, your actions become simpler, cleaner, and more honest. Self-respect grows naturally when your behavior stops being a performance and starts being an expression. You can feel this shift when you stop explaining yourself unnecessarily, when you let silence stand without rushing to fill it, when you choose actions because they're right for you, not because they'll be well received. These moments rebuild your internal authority. Epictetus taught that freedom begins with distinguishing what's within your control from what is. Other people's opinions aren't yours to manage. The moment you stop trying, you reclaim enormous energy. That energy feeds discipline, clarity, and calm. There's a powerful daily exercise you can adopt. Before you speak or act, pause and ask yourself one question. Am I doing this to be aligned or to be approved? That pause is everything. It interrupts old patterns. It forces honesty. You won't get it right every time, and that's fine. Progress isn't perfection, it's awareness. Over time, that question rewires how you move through the world. Another practice is intentional invisibility. Choose moments where you deliberately do not seek recognition. Do the right thing internally, quietly, without signaling it. Practice this relentlessly. He reminded himself not to announce good deeds, not even to himself. This trains your nervous system to detach self-worth from visibility. And the less you crave being seen, the stronger you feel when you are. You'll also need to confront the fear underneath performance, the fear of being misunderstood. The Stoics accepted this as inevitable, wrote that people will misunderstand you no matter what you do. So the question becomes, will you betray yourself trying to manage misunderstanding, or will you stand firm and let opinions pass? Self-respect grows when you choose the second path, not aggressively, calmly, without bitterness. As you stop performing, something subtle changes in how you carry yourself. Your words slow down, your reactions soften, you stop. This isn't indifference, it's groundedness. Seneca said, "The greatest power is to be inwardly free." Inward freedom is what people sense as presence. It's not charisma, it's not dominance, it's coherence, and coherence commands respect without asking for it. Take action today. Identify one area where you're still performing, just one. Decide that for the next few days you'll act there without managing perception. No justifying, no preemptive explanations. Let discomfort arise and pass. Observe it like a Stoic without drama. That discomfort is the sound of old conditioning loosening its grip. You don't need to announce this change. You don't need validation for it. In fact, the less anyone notices, the more powerful it is. Self-respect isn't built in public moments. It's built in private decisions where you choose truth over image. Understood that the strongest man isn't the one who's praised, but the one who doesn't need to be. Nobody cares as much as you think, and that's good news. It means you're free to stop performing and start living deliberately. When you do, self-respect stops being something you chase and becomes something you stand on. That's Stoicism in practice. Calm, quiet, unshakable. Number 10. A focused life leaves no space for unnecessary noise. A focused life leaves no space for unnecessary noise, and once you truly understand this, something inside you settles. You stop feeling pulled in every direction. You stop reacting to everything that tries to grab your attention. Reminded himself, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. That sentence isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to sharpen you. Because when you realize how limited your time and energy actually are, you stop wasting them on distractions that add nothing to your character. Focus isn't about doing more. It's about refusing what doesn't matter. Noise enters your life the moment you stop guarding your attention. It shows up as opinions you didn't ask for, comparisons you didn't need, thoughts that spiral without purpose. The Stoics were relentless about this. They believed that attention is your most valuable resource, and once you give it away carelessly, you weaken yourself. When you focus, truly focus, you begin to feel a quiet authority within. You don't need to announce it. You don't need approval. You simply move with clarity. And clarity eliminates noise naturally, without force. Most of what drains you isn't effort, it's fragmentation. Your mind jumping from one concern to another, never resting, never committing, spoke often about the danger of a scattered mind. He urged himself to return again and again to what was in his control. That's where focus lives. When you narrow your attention to what you can shape, your actions, your discipline, your inner standards, you stop leaking energy. Suddenly, the background chatter loses its grip. It doesn't disappear because you fight it. It disappears because you outgrow it. You don't need to respond to everything that provokes you. You don't need to have an opinion on every passing thought. A focused life teaches you restraint. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." What he meant is this: when you stop chasing external validation, when you stop explaining yourself to invisible judges, your mind becomes lighter. Silence becomes a strength instead of a weakness. Focus doesn't just remove noise, it makes you immune to it. Here, something you need to accept if you want that level of clarity. Not everything deserves your attention, and most things deserve none of it. This isn't arrogance, it's discipline. When your attention is everywhere, your progress is nowhere. But when your attention is deliberate, your life begins to align. You move slower but with intention. You speak less but with precision. You start acting instead of reacting. That's Stoic focus in practice. A simple exercise you can begin today is attention fasting. Choose deliberate periods where you remove unnecessary input, not to escape but to observe. Notice how often your mind reaches outward for stimulation. That urge itself is noise. Trained himself to sit with his thoughts without flinching. You can do the same. When you create space, you discover which thoughts are worth listening to and which ones dissolve on their own. Another practice is defining your essential task. The Stoics believed every day should be governed by a clear intention. Ask yourself each morning, what deserves my best attention today? Not 10 things, 1. When your mind wanders, gently bring it back to that intention. This isn't rigidity, it's respect for your own time. Seneca warned that life feels short not because it is, but because we squander it. Focus is how you stop the squandering. You'll notice that as your focus strengthens, certain things fall away without effort. Arguments lose their appeal, distractions feel hollow, you become selective, and selection is power. Wrote, concentrate every minute like a Roman on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness. That seriousness isn't heaviness, it's presence. When you're present, noise has nowhere to land. There's also an emotional side to this. Noise often disguises itself as urgency. It tries to convince you that everything matters right now. Focus teaches you patience. It reminds you that urgency is usually artificial while purpose is steady. When you stop feeding unnecessary concerns, your emotional state stabilizes. You're no longer tossed around by external triggers. You become grounded. And grounded people don't need to announce their focus. It's visible in how they move through the world. Another powerful exercise is mental subtraction. Instead of asking what you should add to your life, ask what you can remove. Which thoughts drain you? Which habits scatter you? The Stoics practiced voluntary simplicity not as deprivation, but as refinement. Removing excess sharpens what remains. When your mental environment becomes simpler, your focus deepens naturally. You may feel resistance at first. The mind is accustomed to noise. It mistakes stimulation for meaning, but stay with the practice. Each time you choose focus, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Each time you ignore what doesn't matter, you strengthen your inner authority. This is not about isolation. It's about alignment. When your actions match your values, the noise fades because it no longer resonates. Didn't seek silence to escape the world. He sought clarity to live within it properly. That's your aim too. Not withdrawal, but direction. Not numbness, but intentional living. Focus is a form of respect for your time, your energy, your potential. And once you experience that clarity, you'll realize something freeing. You don't need to control the noise outside. You only need to master the space within. Take action now. Choose one area of your life where your attention has been scattered. Commit to narrowing it, just for today. Guard your focus like something sacred because it is. A focused life doesn't just remove noise, it reveals who you are when nothing unnecessary is left. And that version of you is calm, deliberate, and quietly unstoppable. Before you leave, remember this. The moment you truly accept that nobody is coming to validate you, something powerful happens. You stop performing. You stop explaining. You stop waiting for permission. As quietly reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. And that power is wasted the moment you hand it to opinions that don't build your life. Most people will forget what you said, overlook what you tried, and move on with their own worries. That's not cruelty, it's reality. And once you see it clearly, you're free. Free to train in silence. Free to improve without applause. Free to become disciplined, grounded, and unshakable, whether anyone is watching or not. So take this mindset with you. Let it guide how you work, how you think, and how you carry yourself when no one is clapping. Focus on what you can control. Let go of what you can't. And choose every single day to become better for your own sake. If this message resonated with you, don't stop here. Rewatch this video, reflect on it, and apply it. And if you want more Stoic wisdom that sharpens your mind and strengthens your character, stay connected. Because the more you focus on yourself, the less the noise can touch you, and that's where true freedom begins.